Hi everybody and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today we're gonna build a Metroliner, Fairchild Metroliner tube from the brand RVHP scale 172. So let's open the box and see what we have inside. So initially the parts have been packed very well. So and we're gonna start to check all in details. So we're gonna start initially with the instruction sheet and decal sheets. So the instruction sheet is an A4 format with two versions for the US Air Force, different markings, and we have the decals over here. So the decals are in pretty good conditions, nothing to complain about, but I'm not going to use them as I'm going to make it, was a request from a friend of mine, so I will make it as a civilian colors, a civilian livery. So here is the instruction sheet. So as you can see, it's pretty basic, but those kits, those resin kits are made for experienced modelers. So if you are new into the business, I would suggest you to revert to plastics and to main things until you have a little bit more experience. Those are requiring a little bit more experience and different skills. So we're gonna start to open all the boxes and all those compartments one by one and check how is the kit. So the first part is composed to the wing and the fuselage. So I will just open those plastic protection film and then we can have a better look. So as we can see, the fuselage are in two halves. It's a very fine engravement resin, but as you can see, the windows are already filled with some resin, so I will have to cut it through, and then maybe I will fill them up later with some other material that I'm using, like crystal clear, micro crystal clear. So we will have to do a little bit of filling on that fuselage. As you can see, you had some over here. You could see basically that the plastic was there is some upper plastic, and on the nose as well, and they will require a little bit of extra work to be able to get the fuselage to the proper dimension. The interesting part is the main wing. The main wing has been molded in one piece, as you can see, and it's also a very fine engravement. It's a very beautiful kit. We can see all the shape on the wings, and all the panel lines have been very well detailed. So far it's a beautiful kit, and I believe I'm gonna really enjoy to build that kit. Now we're gonna keep opening the different parts. So that part has the horizontal stabilizer, a very fine engravement as well, lots of little details. The surface is also very nice and handy to work with. Now we have the lower part of the engine mount basically, and that's going to be where we have our gear doors and our main landing gear bay. So the panels are open, but again, like as we have on the other parts, on the windows, you'll have to cut open the extra resin. As you can see, so that little square is a little transparent, and that's where we're gonna have to do our opening. Then we have the engine intakes and the front part, and they also are very nice. The mold is really of a very good quality. We have all the panel lines and the structure lines. There will be also some a little bit of extra work to cut off basically and adjust those engines together, but nothing too difficult, nothing we shouldn't be able to handle. Then the last part is the tail, and there is a fin as well, and those are also in very good conditions. I have to say that that kit has been really beautifully done and engineered, and I have to say that I really believe it's going to be a real pleasure to build that little kit. Now let's continue up. There will be some other parts coming up very soon. So here we have, I believe, yeah, all the details basically for the cockpit. So we have the, as you can see maybe here, yeah, you have the yoke, you have the pilot seat, nicely done. You have the that sprue basically has the engine exhaust, which is honestly beautifully made, and we have the spinner, the cone spinner for the engines. We have all our propeller blades, and which will be put later on those cones, and that will allow us either to put them in different torque conditions, which is basically what things that I really enjoy to do. We have also the cockpit, basically. We can see that here you have the rudder pedals. Here is the side console. Here is the glare shield. We have the instrument panel over here, and but it's pretty basic, but nothing too difficult, nothing too hard to be able to ship them. Then we have our wheels, and the wheels have been set on the both sides the same way. So basically you have the front part, the back part, and that's going to be easy to work with. Then we have all little fences and little antennas that will go on our wings, but nothing too difficult. The next part, I will not probably have to use it, as it's all the parts, the pod that I use for that spy plane, or I don't know how you want to call it, it's kind of AWACS. So I'm not going to open this one, but I imagine that all the manufacture has been done the same way. Then we have our windows and undercarriage. So the windows will require some polish, but as I mentioned earlier, those clear parts will require some polishing and some filling, but what I will do is I will use some microcrystal clear, which is basically like a PVA glue, and when it dries it gets completely crystal clear. So that's what I'm going to use for those windows. Now we have a kind of black plastic for the main landing gear and the nose landing gear, and I have to say that all the details are really nice. There is a little bit of extra plastic, as you can see, that you'll have to remove, but nothing too difficult. But the quality of that kit is really beautiful. And now we're coming to the cockpit window, and as you can see, it's a vacuum formed, so that will allow me basically to give a lot of details inside that cockpit, as it's very thin, and I will have to do some beautiful work on that. So this concludes the box opening for that Metroliner. So enough of talking, and let's start building. So we're gonna start this kit by preparing our parts, and as you can see, we have to use a razor blade saw to detach them from the main sprue. So that requires a little bit of more work than our usual injected plastic models, but of course so getting the part ready will take a little bit of a bigger part on that build. Now that our parts are ready, we're gonna start by the cockpit. So there will be a little bit of adjustment, of course, and I will use, like all the resin kit, I will have to use super glue to assemble the parts all together. So we're gonna do this initially, then see how it fit inside the models, and then we're gonna add some more parts, and then we're gonna start working on this cockpit. Following this, we're gonna start assembling our wings. So the wings is in one part, it's by itself, but then we're gonna have to do the engine assembly, and it's basically in 3 more parts. Basically you have the wing itself, and you have the undercarriage and the main engine support will go all together. Of course there will be quite a big gaps, as you can see, and we're gonna fill those gaps with some Tamiya putty. While the putty is drying, we're gonna start working again on our cockpit. So for this I printed basically the instrument panel on a straight piece of paper. Then I cut it at the right dimension and I glue it onto the engine panel. Then we're gonna start painting our cockpit, and for this I use a kind of a beige color, trying to replicate some leather colors from that cockpit. After that we're gonna paint the rest of the engine panel as with the matte black, and continue on working on the cockpit. So where basically the instrument panel as well on the left side and the right side will be black, and then I will use a dry brush technique, trying to use all the little parts, basically to be able to replicate all the instruments and the switches. That's what we use, a dry brush technique. We're gonna move on now to the pilot yoke or the stick, and we're gonna use for this a matte black. Then we're gonna move on to the pilot seats, and for this I will use a light brown, and then later on I'll use another color, a very light brown or a beige color, basically, as trying to replicate those leather and those 2 composite leather seats. So now we're gonna start moving toward the assembly of the cockpit. So we're gonna fix the cockpit with super glue inside the receptacle, and then we're gonna add the instrument panel, and then later on we will add our seats and the stick. Now we're going to add some ballast, and for this I will use some modeling paste. So I will use white modeling paste, then I will try to basically adjust and remove the extra modeling paste from the nose, and I will put that on the back of the aircraft, I mean just after the cockpit itself, and that will basically prevent our cockpit and our aircraft to sit on its tail when it's finished. And during the process you can see that I lost the instrument panel, so I had to re-glue it for a second time. Then we're gonna start gluing and doing the final assembly for that for our fuselage. Now that the fuselage is ready, we're gonna fill all the gaps with some putty once again. As you can see, the gaps can be pretty big sometimes, and that's why modeling resin models are not very suitable for beginners because it requires a lot of extra work. So now we're going to move toward the exhaust of the engine. So I'm going to glue them basically, and of course fill up all the gaps once again with some putty. While this is drying, I'm gonna have to do some adjustment with the thickness of the wing, I mean for the inside part, as I had some issue when I was trying previously to fit it on the fuselage. So there is some fiddling and some adjustment parts to make to that fuselage and those wings to have a proper fitting later on. Once this is done, we're gonna start removing all the extra putty, and that's gonna be the consuming part of that build, like most of our builds. After removing all the extra putty, it's time now to rescribe some of the panel lines who disappeared earlier. So for this I use a very sharp razor blade saw, and once it's finished I'm using a Tamiya rescribing tool, and this allows basically to remove a little bit of extra matter, and then once we have that, we see that there is still some panel lines and some holes who need to be filled, so we're gonna do this once again. While the putty is drying on the fuselage, we're gonna start removing all the extra one on the wings. As you can see, 2 layers of putty was maybe not enough to fill all the gaps and all the little holes. So that requires a third times and sometimes even more until we really get the perfect surface that we are looking for. So we're now moving to a delicate part. We're gonna put the windscreen on the model. So the part is a clear part and there is only one, so we have to do a little bit of adjustment, and you really have to be very careful, as if you cut a little bit too much you won't have a second chance to readjust. So you have to be very careful, and this is very close to the real windscreen, so that's why it's going to take a little bit of time to do all the adjustment necessary for that windscreen. We are now going to fix the windscreen onto the model, and as you can see I cover it with adhesive tape or some masking tape to prevent basically to have any marks on the sensitive area, which is the windscreen itself. Then we're gonna add the fin or the vertical stabilizer. I will use super glue, and once this is done I will have to fill the remaining gaps as well with super glue, and that will give us a stronger bond and fill up some part of the gaps. Of course I will use again some Tamiya putty, and for the windscreen as well I had to use a lot of putty and did a lot of removing because the gap was a little bit too strong, and it required quite a lot of work to have a decent result. I'm going through the second layer of putty, as you can see, as it's changed its color, and there is still quite a lot of things to do, and there will be another third or fourth level even. Now it's time to do a part of the final assembly where we're gonna glue the wings to the fuselage, and of course we're gonna fill all those gaps with again some more putty. So after that there will be the usual work of cleaning up and removing the extra putty. Now I'm gonna do basically a thin layer of white paint, especially over the windscreen, to see basically if the surface is very good, because paint normally reveal all the imperfections, and as you can see I had to go back again on that junction between the fuselage and the windscreen, as it was not really a very smooth area, and of course I had to go again, do a little bit of paint to see until I had the proper result. So once I had the proper result, I will have to do, I will paint basically the undercarriage, who was on a white color as well, and of course the wheel itself, the wheel themselves, basically the spinners, and then we're going to start the whole paint job on that aircraft. So we're going to use a light gray to paint the propeller blades, and then we're going to move on to basically the blue or metallic light blue lines, and they are basically on the engines, and there is a double line on the fuselage. I mean, it's a single line moving on to a double line toward the tail. Then we're gonna have to do all the masking, and we're gonna do the final layer, painting the overall aircraft in white. Now that our paint job is finished, we're gonna fill the windows, and for this I use some microcrystal clear solution. Basically it's a sort of PVA glue who's gonna become completely clear while it's dry, and that will replace all the passenger windows. Time to prepare the undercarriage as well, so we're gonna do the assembly. Of course we're gonna remove them from the sprues, so there will be a little bit of a paint touch-up later on, but initially we're gonna put those undercarriage together, basically the wheels toward the gear itself, and then we're gonna be able to glue them to the aircraft. It's time for the little touch-ups as well. So what we're going to do, we haven't done the anti-ice, which are boost on that aircraft, and we're going to use later on matte black. And of course we have also to do the little bit white lines on the blade, the propeller blades, and then we're going to move on basically toward the paint of those boosts. So using the same technique, basically a little bit of a protection, and then we're going to use a paintbrush to paint them in matte black. After that, we're gonna start working on the engine exhaust, on the exhaust pipe, and for this I will use an exhaust color, but I will use the paintbrush as it's a little bit a small part. Then we're gonna try to prepare our propeller, our blades, and as you can see, well, we just put them on a spinner. There was a little bit of a touch up with that gray, as some of the paint went under the protection. Now we're gonna start weathering the aircraft, and that's the fun part. So for this I use some pastel paint, dark pastel paint mixed with a little bit of water and 1 drop of liquid soap, and basically we mix it all together, and then we're gonna get her plane a little bit dirty, trying to get all the panel lines out to get a little bit more deepness effect on the aircraft. And once it's dry, well, basically what I'll do is I'll use some cotton buds, just humid ones, and I'm also using sometimes a sponge almost dried, and to remove and make also the winds effect on the weathering. So this will take a little bit of time, and I was on the phone with the person I built the model for, as he wanted the model to be to have a lot of weathering. He told me make it dirty as it used to be when I used to see it in the desert. So I did quite a lot. So after that, what I did, I went from some metallic paint, and I was trying to do some chips on the original paint of the aircraft, and that was also kind of interesting. So basically what you do, you use also the bright brush technique. You put some little dots, and then you will use that dry brush or the dry sponge basically to tear it off a little bit. You can put also a little bit of paint on that sponge and use that sponge technique, and that will give you a good effect of paint chips all over the fuselage. So this is the final result of that Metroliner on scale 172 from RVHP. I hope you enjoyed that build with me. I really did so actually, and if you did so as well, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you soon for another build review and kit review. Thank you for watching.